Hi class, in this we're going to go over chapters on consumption and saving. So this is a pretty straightforward chapter, so let's get started. So let's talk about what is consumption. So consumption is anything that households spend money on. Remember we talked about the GDP. So GDP is the market value of all final goods and services. So consumption is everything the consumers spend money on these final goods and services. And then if you remember what you learned from the previous chapter, that our GDP equals to so GDP equals to C plus I plus G plus NX. This is the same consumption we're talking about over here. Right? So consumption is all the consumers in the economy, all the total spendings is also part of our overall GDP. So for our consumption, for the US economy, consumption is the biggest component of our GDP. So on an annual basis, consumption is about maybe 68% to about 70% of our overall GDP. So consumption for US economy is the biggest component of the GDP. Also known as the consumption function. So think about everything that all the consumption you have for the entire year. If you want to put that into a formula, so imagine you have a formula that says, your consumption, let's call this Y, equals to maybe intercept plus a slope times X. Does this looks familiar to you? Something you learned in your Algebra 1 class or your college algebra class? This y-intercept, the slope formula. Same formula for our consumption function. So consumption function says, so consumption equals to, let's call this a autonomous consumption. So autonomous consumption means that this is your basic spending for the entire year. That this is your basic necessities, your bread, your butters. So doesn't matter how much income you have, you're gonna buy the same amount of good. That's called an autonomous consumption. Plus the slope. Now the slope, I'm gonna teach you, this is called an MPS. This definition over here stands for marginal propensity to consume. So this is the slope for the consumption times our income. Right. So basically, the equation says that for our total consumption, so for everything you're spending in the household, it equals to our necessity. So the basic spending for the entire year, that whatever you need to buy to survive, plus any consumption depends on how much income you have, right? So this part of consumption is also called income-induced consumption. So as your income increases, how much more consumption do you have? That's called an income-induced consumption, right? So this one here, the intercept is income independent, so it doesn't depend on income. Over here is our income-induced consumption, so it does depend on income here. And then this MPS, so MPS says marginal propensity to consume is the fraction of each extra dollar you make, how much of it you're going to spend it on consumption, right? So for every $1 extra you make, so one more dollar you make, how much of that $1 is going into our consumption? That is measured by MPS. So MPS is somewhere between 0 to 100 or 0 to 1, right? So if imagine if this one says your consumption, your MPS is 0.8, that means you're gonna make $1, you're gonna spend 80 cents, and then the other 20 cents you're gonna use for saving, right? So that's your MPS. If you look at this MPS here, and this blue line is our consumption function. So this intercept here, that is our autonomous consumption. So that's your basic necessities. And this slope, the slope for the line, that is our MPS, the marginal propensity to consume. So your consumption will equals to your autonomous consumption, the basic necessity, plus your income multiplied by our slope for the line, right? So that's your consumption function, okay? You're gonna see some question like this on your quiz, so just plug in the formula. So again, your consumption Let me erase everything. So your consumption equals to your autonomous consumption plus NPS times your income. That is your consumption. Okay. All right, so next note is the saving. So saving is your income minus consumption that you're saving. So for all the consumption, for all the income you have, for all the money you make, you can do two things with it. You can either spend it, that's your consumption, or don't spend it, right? That's your saving, right? So two possible use for your money. Either you spend it for consumption or don't spend it, that's your saving. So that's where saving come from. Okay, so it's the leftover from consumption. That part of the income is our saving. Now, you spend more than what you have. So if you borrow money, that's called dissaving. So dissaving means that every time if your income is less than your consumption, that is called dissaving. So that means you're going to borrow money to make this consumption happen because your income is just simply not enough anymore. Okay. All right. So the micro consumption. So know what is the rational rule for consumers. So for consumers, whenever we think about this consumption here, we're thinking about what is the marginal benefit of your dollar spent now versus the marginal benefit of your dollar spent in the future, right? So how much does this consumption bring to you in the benefit today versus how much the benefit will bring to you in the future? Now, if you're somebody who value today more, then you're going to spend more money today. But if you're somebody who value your future more, so you believe that that this money saved will give you actual benefit that in the future, that you are tend to more likely to save the money, right? So that's called a rational rule for consumers. We're comparing what is our marginal benefit for dollar consumption today versus the marginal benefit of our dollar consumption in the future. That's the determination for our current consumption level. I also know something called a consumption smoothing. So this is somebody who try to have a very smooth consumption. So imagine, we have a person whose lifetime. So this might be from age 0 to age, I don't know, maybe 100, right? So if you're consumption smoothing, then you're gonna try to make a consumption as smooth as possible. So almost consistent. Now, to make that happen, we're gonna do something special, either borrow money or save money, because otherwise, at 0 year old, at 1 year old, you don't make any money, right? So how do we make it happen? You borrow money, right? So for this consumption smoothing to happen, then there will be some saving and dissaving involved. Also known as your permanent income. So permanent income is your best estimate of your long-term average income. And that's the key for this consumption smoothing. So to make it smooth, we're gonna estimate how much our lifetime permanent income is, or the lifetime average income. Again, look at this chart over here. So when you're young, you borrow money to make your consumption happen. But when you're mature, you're old, you're working, then you're making a lot of money. So this red line is your income, and then you're saving money here. And then toward the end, when you're retired, you're gonna be using the money you have saved. So again, this saving, right? So this and this here, that is our this saving, right? So saving is whenever the income is more than consumption. Dissaving is whenever the income is less than consumption. All right, so there are 5 insights for this macro level of consumption income. Now we're gonna only going over the 3 of them. The last 2, you can read over them. It's not that relevant, but the first 3 is pretty important. So first one says that your MPC is your temporary change income. So imagine that your current consumption depends on your temporary change income. So if you're let's say your boss, gave you I don't know, a $500 bonus only for this year, that will be a temporary change, right? So your current consumption depends on part of your temporary change income. Now it's a permanent income. So imagine your boss says, hey, you're doing a very good job, but instead of giving you a $500 bonus, I will give you a $500 raise. That means continuously your income will be increased by $500. So that will also change your consumption as well, right? So whenever your temporary income change, that will change your consumption. Whenever your permanent income change, that will also change your consumption. If you guys look at so this is the chart provided by the textbook, the income level for different education level. So if you have a bachelor degree in economics, well, this is very optimistic. So at the beginning, you're gonna make more money than everybody else. So that's the year of experiences after graduation. So with a bachelor degree in economics, you're gonna start with about $50,000, and then income goes higher, right? So this change here, that is your change in your permanent income, right? So income is increasing, that means our average income is higher. So for anybody supposedly with a degree in economics can make more money than than degree from other majors. Okay. So the last insight about this income consumption is that it's really difficult to forecast our consumption level because the change in consumption is really unpredictable, right? So if you look at this chart over here, shows you the percentage change in our real consumption in the economy. You see this big fluctuation from time to time. But one thing you can know is that whenever it goes down, so this level here, this level here, this level here, that's usually a sign of economy going into recession. Because every time economy slows down, the first thing will go down is our consumption, right? So whenever you see a dip in the consumption, that usually means a recession in the economy. So just imagine how difficult it is to predict a recession. That's how difficult it is to predict a consumption change. All right, so also know that credit constraint can also impact our current consumption because this really goes down to our saving, dissaving, right? So when you borrow money, how do you borrow money? By using credit, right? So think about your credit cards, your line of credit from the bank, you go to bank borrow money. So those rely on this credit constraint. So whenever the credit constraint changes, that will change our overall access to borrow money and change our overall access to this consumption here. So credit constraint is one component and change or impact our current consumption level, especially when our consumers are borrowing money. There are two types of consumers. We have what is called a hand-to-mouth consumer, so who spend their current income, that means no saving. And then we have consumption smoothers, who spend their permanent income, that means we're going to have a saving here. Right, so two complete opposite. Hand to mouth don't save money at all. Consumption smoothers will save the money and try to make sure the consumption is very steady. So almost the same. All right, so whenever you have a temporary change in your income, you're going to see a very small change in your consumption smoothers, but a big change in our hand-to-mouth consumers. Because hand-to-mouth consumers, they really depends on this current consumption level, right? So how much the income change, that will change their overall consumption for this time because they have no saving whatsoever. And the same thing with our permanent increase in income. So both consumer here see a big change in consumption. But if you have, let's say, an anticipated increase in income, so your boss says, hey, you're doing a very good job. I will give you a $500 bonus next month. Well, when that happens, either you might be getting more money in the future than for our consumption smoother, this will be no change whatsoever because we're going to try to spread this out. But for your hand-to-mouth consumers, then we're going to spend the entire bonus all in the same month. Now, if it's something that if you expecting that you might be making more future income, so a rise in the future income, then for a consumption smoother, then we're going to try to borrow money now because we know they're going to be having more income in the future, then today they're going to borrow money, so consumption increases. But for the hand-to-mouth consumers, that wouldn't happen because that future income hasn't come in yet. They're only spending with the income they have today. So any changes in the expectation for future income will have no impact on the hand-to-mouth consumers. All right, will shift our consumption. So there are four factors can shift our consumption, and then for this consumption change, for these consumption shifters, it's very similar to our supply demand shift. So every time you're moving on the same consumption line, that's not a that's not a shift in consumption. That's the change in the quantity of consumption, right? Or the change of level consumption. So this only happens if you're only moving from one point to the next point whenever you have an increase or decrease in income. Now, however, if you have those other four-factor change, so the ones I saw before on the previous slide, they will be shifting the consumption curve either higher or lower. Okay, so if it's more consumption, shifting higher. If it's lower consumption, shifting lower. First factor can shift our consumption is our real interest rate. It's how much interest rate the bank pays the depositors and how much interest rate the bank charge on the borrowers. So at a higher interest rate, then depositors will save more money. They have more consumption. They have more money. They have more income available, so they are better off. But at a higher interest rate, people who borrow money tend to be worse off because more of their income goes to interest payment, right? So this interest rate will have an impact on the consumption level, depends on whether or not if you are saving money or borrow money. And the next factor is our expectation. Now, this is especially important for our consumption smoothers because their expectation for the future income will have an impact on the current consumption level. So if the consumer feel very, very confident about their future income, so imagine, let's say, for sure, I know I'll win the lottery, for sure. Well, if that's my expectation, then that will change my current consumption level, right? So that expectation can increase the consumption today. It can also decrease the consumption today. So imagine expecting, hey, the economy is doing pretty bad. I might be losing my job next month, right? So that's a very bad expectation, right? So should I still spend money today? Maybe not, right? So your current consumption really depends on your expectation for the future income. Now, if you compare something called a consumer sentiment, this is also known as consumer confidence index. So if you type in Fred and type in consumer confidence index, you'll see it. So whenever consumer confidence index is high, then our consumption is high, right? Because that consumer confidence is based off our expectation for the future. So the consumer confidence and our consumption, they will grow hand in hand, right? So both increase or decrease at the same time. And that's a very good indicator of how good our economy is. The next, taxes, right? So taxing also shift our consumptions. So more tax you pay, the less money you have available for something called a disposable income. So disposable income is your income subtract tax. So income subtract tax, that is our disposable income. So how much money is left over for you to spend. So the lower the tax, the more the disposable income. And then vice versa, the more tax, the lower the disposable income, right? So they're inversely related. And lastly is just your wealth, right? So how much wealth do you have? Now, normally this number here, for most consumer, we're thinking, hey, this number doesn't change much, but this really change a lot. Depends on how good the economy is, because one thing the economy tend to change a lot is our housing price, right? So whenever the price for housing is getting more, for all the homeowners, they have more wealth now, right? So imagine, let's suppose right now, so I live in Houston. So imagine right now the real estate market in Houston is very, very good. And then my house currently is valued at $5 million. That's great, right? And even though I don't have the cash now, but I know that that's how much wealth I have. So knowing that my house worth $5 million, that might increase my current behavior for consumption. I might be spending more money. I don't need to save money anymore because my house is worth $5 million. I can always sell the house for more money, for more money, right? So that's also another shifter or factor can change our consumption. All right, so guys, really be familiar with this slide over here. So this is a pretty good review or summary of all the factors can change our consumption function and also the factor that doesn't change our consumption function, right? So whenever your income changes, we're moving on the same consumption function. But if it's the other four factor change, interest rate, expectation, tax, wealth, so there will be a shifting of our consumption function. So what motivates saving? So why do we save money? We save money whenever there's a change in income over our life cycle, right? So for for most people in the economy, at an early age, our income's pretty low, right? So we tend to borrow money. But once your income's higher, we tend to save money. And that's because once you're getting older, once you retire over here, you have lower income now. And what do? We're gonna use the money we saved, supposedly, supposedly. But the problem is, for most Americans, we don't save money, right? But if you do, this is how you behave, right? You borrow money when you're young, you save money when you mature, and then once you get retired, you can use the saving you have. And next, we also have changing need over our life cycle, right? So imagine if you just start working, you are single, you're by yourself, you have no other spending, but you might want to save little money on the side, just in case in the near future you might be getting married, having kids. That's very expensive, right? So there might be a change in your life cycle need. Then you might want to save some money just in case something happens, or maybe you want to save money for retirement, right? That's also a changing need over life cycle. Lastly, next, then you might want to bequest your money to your family. That means when you die, you want to leave some money behind for your family. So like a house, saving account, or even life insurance. That's all bequest, right? That's your gift to your family when you die. So that's another incentive to save money. Lastly, it's just for precautionary saving. What if something goes wrong, right? So what if you don't have your job tomorrow? What if tomorrow another pandemic hit and then your income take a hit, right? So just to be safe, let's save some money on the side, right? So that's called a precautionary saving. And then for most Americans, we don't have any precautionary saving. So the research did a study. They asked many Americans, and they asked them, hey, how easy would it be for you to come up with $2,000? And then over half of the people says they can't, or they can't. It's really difficult because over half the population doesn't have any saving. We're hand-to-mouth consumers. The other half, they might be able to, right? So those are the consumption smoothers. Okay. All right. I'll show you. So this looks a little different than what you have in the original PowerPoint. So this is our saving. So notice that, so in the PowerPoint, this is what they show in the PowerPoint, in the original PowerPoint. So in the recession, in the 2008 recession, our saving went up a little bit. Now, and that's because this precautionary saving, that in the '08 recession, when the economy was very, very bad, people getting worried about the economy, right? So people getting worried about the future. So my job is not secure anymore. So I want to save some money on the side, right? So in a bad economy, in 2008, our saving actually went up, but that actually goes against our common belief. Because most economy argue is that whenever economy is down, so in a recession, we should be able to access the money we saved from before. So there should be some dissaving going on in a recession. But for the US economy, it's actually reversed. When the economy is bad, consumers start saving money. And that's because this precautionary saving. Now, I want you guys to look at this one over here. This one here, that's the 2020 2020 pandemic, right? So the March 2020. So the highest saving rate in US history happened in April 2020. That was about 33% saving rate for the entire country. That means almost 1/3 of our national income was all saved. And why? Well, because the economy is shutting down. For most people, they couldn't go anywhere to spend money anymore, right? So they don't have the opportunity to spend money anymore. So consumption really was limited to groceries and toilet papers. And that's why our saving rate was so high back in 2020, right? But as the economy getting better, so as the pandemic goes away, saving rates start getting lower, 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 right? So now saving rate is actually down very, very low, actually lower than our 2008 recession level. So that's because we're going back to work now, we're going back to travel now, going back to vacation now, so we're spending more money and also saving less money. Okay. By the way, this little bump here, right here, this little bump, that's when the COVID variant. So 2021. So first economy was getting better. Everybody starts to travel now, so saving rate goes down. And then the was it Delta variant, right? Delta was hitting America, so pandemic getting worse again, so people start saving money again, right? So for U.S. economy, the saving is really goes counter against our how good the economic condition is. Okay, all right. Some smart saving strategies. So have a budget, stick to it. Make sure you can handle some unexpected cost. So have some precautionary saving on the side. And then if your company offer a retirement plan, use it because many company does match how much your saving is. So I know my wife's company actually match up to 10% of her saving. Right, so the more money she save, the more money her company will pay her. And then plan to save more money in the future. And lastly, keep as much money as you can. Okay, so don't spend too much money. All right, guys, that's it for this chapter. Have any question? Let me know. Okay, bye bye.